But when there is that urge to protect ourselves because we are in pain, in fear, in lack, in not good enough, not lovable, all of these lower states of consciousness, that for sure is coming from ego and its self-preservation, Yetzer Hara, we can call it that. And sometimes it's very subtle and sometimes it's really not. We can have a thought about a situation or a circumstance in our life, like why is this so hard? Why am I falling behind? I'm just not good enough. Nobody loves me. Nobody cares about me. Why even bother? I have no friends. Blah, blah. So all of this mental chatter, and it can feel so real. And here's where we need to practice discernment and to play this game. Otherwise, we're going to get played. So to really see the difference and feel the difference internally, is it an expansive state that I'm in? Do these thoughts allow me and lead me to think of new possibilities and new ideas for my life? Do they lead me to connect to people and connect to my higher self? Or are they leading me to shut down and to go inward and to make everyone else my enemy, right? And to be competitive and withdraw. So there's definitely clear signs that we can see when we are operating from that lower consciousness and the ego. And do we want to let the ego run the show? Do we want to let wherever that ego developed, right? From a 5-year-old, from a 2-year-old, wherever our coping mechanisms developed, we're letting that run the show if we say, yeah, that's real. Now, here's another point of it that we need to be discerning about, because yes, we don't want to let the ego run the show. We don't want to take actions based out of fear and lack and not good enough, even though a lot of people do. But it leads to more of that. It doesn't lead to contentment. So let's put aside the story of the ego. Let's put aside all of those negative thoughts and those thoughts that are just actually not true, even though it feels like they are. Let's put those aside, and the rationale and all the logical mind stuff. But what we do need to extract, because there's a reason why we feel this way, right? And there's a reason why we have this story. We need to extract the feelings and the emotions that are running that story, that are underneath that story, whether it's fear, and we can feel that deep in our belly. We can feel anger in our gut. We can feel it in our shoulders. We can feel frustration. We can feel deep sadness, grief, longing, right? And actually those feelings, those emotions are what are stuck in those stories and in those thoughts and not letting us move on. And we just go straight to the mind, we go straight into the ego, and we bypass the actual juice that needs to be uncovered here. It's like those sparks that we are collecting and we're reintegrating. So next time you have that kind of ego-based thought, see what the feeling is behind it. Maybe there's an ache in the heart. Maybe there's a sort of shut down feeling, and you might feel it in your gut, or maybe there's something kind of cloudy in your head, and just tune into what does that really feel like? Stop judging yourself, judging others. Forget the story and try to just tune into your body, right? And this is a somatic piece. And just feel. And it might be really uncomfortable. It might elicit more emotions and more feelings. And you might have to stop what you're doing. You might have to go to the bathroom. You might have to do something. You might have to step out to be in a private space to really allow those emotions to flow. And it's very scary and we don't like to do it. Knowing that, this is something that's helped me, knowing that Hashem, that God, universe, source, is completely behind me in this process. That this is the human process. This is what humans need to do. This is how we cope and how we move on and how we actually expand. Because when there's a constriction in the body from some sort of trauma or some sort of pain or hurt that happened, we tighten up. And where do we tighten up? We tighten up in our actual cell structure. The cells actually tighten and they squeeze. And And then those cells, the divine flow that's flowing through us, the source that's animating us, cannot flow through something that's constricted, right? If there's a blockage in a river, the water cannot flow through. It has to go around, or it has to stop. And so the waters get murky over there. That's exactly what's happening with us. So that divine channel, those divine downloads, that our essence, our soul cannot flow. It's hitting up against something. It's hitting up against a rock and constriction. Sometimes that can feel like pain internally. That can feel like tightness, stiffness. Something is aching. Ugh. And we go to a doctor and we try to solve it. But if we see it like it's our soul is trying to move through us and expand out in our bodies fully, take up more space in our bodies so that we are more soul, right? That if that process is happening, so we have to allow those rocks, those blockages to dissolve. And we do that by tuning in, noticing the feeling without judgment, and just letting it pass through, letting those feelings get expressed now without the story. And over time, that constriction is going to open up. Those cells are going to start to breathe. And we can do this through breath work also. Open up our channels, open up our vessels through breath work. They're going to start to breathe and allow for that flow to happen in a smooth way. Allow for more of the soul to populate the body, right? And then it's going to be natural that we're tapped into our higher self. It's going to be natural that our thoughts are coming from source energy and from our divine connection to source, from our soul, rather than from the constricted, tight places, the slave mentality. What are we a slave to? To our fears, to our pains, to, distractions, wanting to avoid feeling something that keeps us in constriction versus openness and expansion. So that's the game, folks. That's what we're playing. Guess, is it ego or is it our higher self? And again, nothing wrong with it. We have ego. We're always in some, there's ego everywhere. And can we focus on what's important? Can we extract the feelings from it? Leave the story. Let that expand us more. And let that help us come into our higher consciousness.